You want to? Okay. Okay. So how it's going to work? We're going to start out with introductions. Introductions are going to be. We went back and forth on if they should be 3 minutes or 2 minutes. So I'm actually going to let you guys choose real quick. Do you want introductions and rebuttals to be 2 or 3 minutes?
2.
Both.
That's fine.
I'll go 2.
But okay. So both introduction and rebuttal will be 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. So introduction, 2 minutes for each of you. First, Chase said he's going to go first. So Chase gets the introduction, followed by Anthony's introduction, followed by each going back to back with 2 minutes of rebuttals. We will have 3, let me repeat, 3 rounds of rebuttals. We will go into the questionnaire section, which really just lasts how long you guys want it to last. Okay.
Look at my dog.
This
Okay,
is
that's
the most
interesting.
like
It's debate.
squirrel thing ever.
Sunday,
Like
hi.
ADHD much? Like holy crap.
You're such a good girl. I love you, Sunday.
Okay. All right. Now.
All right.
Okay, so am I going to begin?
Autismo. Is Autismo here? Autismo.
What? I'm fucking playing Call of Duty. What you need?
Mute your mic. Mute your mic.
Mute your mic.
Mine is. What? You asked if I'm here.
My bad.
his
He's
was
got.
muted.
I know why. It's because he's got a headset muted.
Yeah.
I forgot he does it on his Xbox. Sorry, Autismo. Okay, so here we go. Chase, whenever you are ready, I will start the clock. This debate, this foreign policy, interventionism versus non-interventionism, and Iranian-U.S.-Israeli conflict debate starts now. Whenever you're ready, I'll start the time.
All right, I'll begin. So I have concerns with the drastic non-interventionist turn that some people in the Republican Party are taking. I'm not saying go full neocon and like bomb everybody. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying the fact that we seem like the Republican Party and people in general seem scared to intervene in places now. And I don't think that's politically prudent nor a good thing. Because if you look at World War II, World War II started because of our inaction. Had we hopped on it, World War II would have not been nearly as bloody. Our inaction caused a lot of deaths in World War II. That's a fact. And I honestly believe that our inaction in the Iranian conflict would have also caused a lot more deaths, because then Iran will be able to get a nuke faster because they would have the capacity. They have no more capacity because of the strike. Now, am I saying that the strike was politically prudent, like to keep going and invading them? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I think it's important that we struck them now because quite frankly, they're a jihadist terrorist state who will stop at nothing to kill Christians and Jews. That's a fact. And you can disagree with this, but it's true. And I think that it's concerning the amount of support that they're getting, specifically from what I like to call the woke right, which is like, the Tucker Carlsons, Candace Owens, Dave Smith, those people. And I think that that's concerning because I don't think that's a traditional idea of either side. Because it's like this concept of siding with our enemies now, and it's crazy. Like siding with Russia, Iran. Like I could not have imagined this 5 years ago, and I think it's quite frankly ludicrous, and the direction we're going needs to stop. That's all I got.
Okay, that was Chase's opening statement. Now it is time for Anthony to make his opening statement. I will get the clock ready, and you will be able to go whenever. I'll start your timer whenever you're ready. You can go now.
All right, when we're going ahead and we're talking about the foreign policy and all this other stuff. So when you're saying that we would have been able to stop the deaths in World War II, that is actually not what would have happened, because we got to understand, yes, there was a lot of buildup to World War II, but with the Blitzkrieg that Germany did, there was no stopping it. Now with the interventionalism that we're having right now, what we're basically trying to say is we're not the werewolf, whatever, right? Now, we're looking at the bombing of Iran. And the thing is that, like, remember, for like the last, 40 years, we've been in the Middle East. All right, what do we have to show for it? We have to show millions of lives that are no longer here. Billions upon trillions of dollars of taxpayer money that cannot be seen anymore because we've decided that these so-called weapons of mass destruction are now here. Now, Ted Cruz is now also trying to paint the fact that he believes it was the Iranians that were going ahead and saying like, oh, they were assassinating Trump on that day in Butler. There is a lot of things that are happening right now that we have to understand. It is not the way to do things. We should never be a part of another country's conflict when it comes to anything. And especially because the Middle East, because it is a cesspool of tyranny.
Okay, that was Anthony's opening statement. You had a lot of time left, actually, about 30 seconds left, but that's okay. Chase, you will now be ready for the first round of rebuttals. You can start whenever you're ready.
I would heavily push back on the fact that there is no sense in getting involved in another country's war, because there has actually been sense in getting involved in another country's war. South Korea and North Korean war, the Korean War in the 50s, South Korea was overwhelmed by North Korean troops. The communists would have snuffed them out had it not been for U.S. intervention. And we would have a communist Korea to this day. And this is one of numerous examples. Not all of them have been successful, but many of them have been. And I think it's important to know that we stop the spread of communism by getting involved in some other countries' conflicts. And I think that that's important to strike the balance between, we don't want to invade everybody, but we know when we have to fight a war, we got to be ready. Peace is not always an option. It's not always a realistic option. Peace is great when you can have it, but you can't always have it. So going back, so this whole principle that you're like trying to prescribe of saying we should never be involved in another country's war is quite frankly ridiculous. And I think that history backs this up, because if we don't back up our smaller allies, it comes to us eventually. Like we knew about 9/11 before it happened. We could have taken actions and stopped it, but we did not, because we undermined the threat a little bit, and we didn't think it would happen. And that's a fact. I mean, you can say whatever you want, your conspiracy theories, but that's true. And I think that fundamentally, this non-interventionist attitude is very dangerous and could cause World War III. I think we need to be involved in certain conflicts necessarily to keep world stability, because we are, whether we like it or not, the world's police. We are the world superpower. We have the most powerful military in the world. We're the first, second, and fourth largest air force in the entire world. We are the power, and if we're not there to fill the hole, China will. China wouldn't hesitate to invade a country. China wouldn't hesitate to get involved in the conflict. So why should we be? Especially when it's such a pivotal region. I mean, obviously, not every Middle Eastern conflict has worked out. Although you could argue that was from mismanagement. But fundamentally, saying we should never get involved in another person's conflict is ludicrous, and history does not support it. That's all I got.
Well, here's the thing, Chase. All right, when we're looking at this stuff, when it comes to this, so for instance, the Korean War, all right, our NATO allies were already over there. That is why we got involved with it. Now, we're taking communism into a factor now. Okay, so we look at the Red Scare that we had. All right, this was us getting involved into different countries, telling them how they should be ruling their people. Well, now when you're going ahead and saying like, yeah, we're the world's police, stuff like that. Well, there's times that yes, we should be going ahead and intervening, and there are times that we should not be. So, for instance, in the Iranian conflict right now, we would 100% should not have been involved. This is a ludicrous idea that we went ahead and said, like, oh, you know what? Let's go ahead and bomb these facilities. What would have happened if Iran shot down one of our pilots, captured them, had one of our planes? This was a ridiculous idea that the President of the United States has decided that we need to go ahead and do. Just because, well, he's like, well, Netanyahu said we should do it. But you and I agree that Israel has a right to defend itself, right to exist in that matter. Now, we probably differ on whether or not we should go ahead and just get involved just because our allies say we need to. I don't necessarily think that we need to, because a lot of the times, as Americans, what we want does not represent necessarily what our allies want.
Yeah, that is true, but I do think we have a fundamental interest in not letting Iran have nukes, and I don't think that is just an Israeli interest. It's also in the U.S.'s interest, because Turkey is a NATO country and it's right on their border, and they're not really a fan of Turkey, and also Europe isn't too far away, And not to mention, Iran has backed so many proxies and killed thousands of Americans. Hezbollah, for example, killed thousands of Americans in the 80s. And they killed Marine troops. So by saying that Iran has, so basically the argument you're doing is that it's not in the U.S. interest to help Israel. No, it's not really in the U.S. interest to help Israel directly. But we have our own names for this conflict because Iran has caused a significant amount of deaths to the United States, and that is a provable fact. And so I think it's concerning, to say the least, that saying we can't bomb some nuclear sites. Now, if you're saying you want it to go to a broader war, that I don't want that. I don't think it's necessary to go to a broader war, and I don't think that should be anyone's goal. Maybe it is some people's, but it certainly isn't mine. I just think that this strike was necessary to cripple their nuclear capacity for another decade at least. And I think that it was a necessary evil. Like, striking countries is not always in America's benefit. I will say that. Like, the Vietnam War was not in America's benefit. Invading Iraq was not in America's benefit. But we need to make the calculated risk that sometimes it is. And I think that's needed. And I think Trump made this independently calculated risk from Netanyahu, saying that Iran can't have nukes, which he has been consistent about since the year 2015. You can read old tweets about it. So I don't think this is a new policy. And I think that saying it is quite frankly ludicrous. And this is still America first. Putting America last would be letting Iran get a nuke. And so fundamentally, Trump did the right thing at the right time. And however, we need to de-escalate the situation from now on. Thank you.
Well, this isn't necessarily going ahead and saying that we need to de-escalate the situation or going ahead and saying, well, Netanyahu let Trump do it. Netanyahu was putting it in Trump's mind from the get-go. He went ahead and said beforehand that the strikes that Israel did itself had U.S. involvement. All right. Now you're saying Europe is close. Well, fine. Why don't they do it? Why don't they get involved then? And we are halfway across the world. We have lost too many people already to endless wars. And the thing is that growing up in a military family, growing up in a military presence, and as soon as the bombings happen, you know that war is going to eventually come out. Bush bombed. Obama bombed. Clinton bombed. Each one of these presidents, we've ended up going to wars with these countries, or we were already involved with them. It's just what's going to happen. History repeats itself over and over and over again. And you could say that it was a necessary evil to go ahead and get the nuclear facilities out. Sure, whatever. But it was not worth risking the Americans' lives that were going ahead and using the B-22s and obliterating them. What we should have done at the very most was let the Israelis do it. We should not have risked our own American people to do it.
I'm just gonna push back on something. As someone who has also grown up in a military family and has many family members in the military, I know what pointless war looks like. My grandpa served in Vietnam and got hurt. I know what pointless war looks like, and I know that it can be bad. I'm not saying that all war is necessary. It's not. But I'm saying in this certain case, this is not a war, and I don't think it'll turn into a war. Because if we look back at history, I don't agree history repeats itself, but it definitely rhymes. So I would say if you look back at Clinton's bombing of Sarajevo, we did not send a single U.S. troop into the Balkans. It was all a bombing campaign that resulted in Serbia getting defeated independently from NATO and from us. We didn't lose troops in the Balkans. And also Obama's bombings, many of them did not result in troop loss. Some of them did, but a lot of them did not. And I don't think Iran wants to poke the bear and go to war with us. I don't think they have the capacity for it. In fact, the state of Ohio has a bigger GDP than Iran. So I think fundamentally saying Iran can go to war with us is ludicrous because they can't, and they know it. So I think they're going to sue for peace, and I think that that's the opinion of the Trump administration as well. Hence why he is making these reckless posts, which I will agree are reckless, but they might be necessary to get Iran to the table because Iran fundamentally knows that they cannot defeat us in a war, and they won't even try because they know they can't. And so I think, yes, we did put U.S. troops at risk, and I know the damage that can cause because, again, I have relatives in the military. I have relatives that were involved in some of this stuff. I know it. But I think that fundamentally it was the necessary evil thing to do. And I think that I'm tired of this attitude of us being scared to bomb places. Like we're scared. Like think of all the great empires in history. Were they scared? Like the Roman Empire, were they scared? The Mongol Empire, were they scared? Because the U.S. is the next great empire, and I think that that's a fact. And I think anyone with 2 brain cells can see that. Thank you.
What happens to empires when they get too big? They fall. Empires fall every single time that they stretch themselves too thin. That's what's going to happen to the U.S. It's happening right now because we're stretching ourselves too thin right now because we refuse to focus what's going on at home, and we want to go ahead and try to make sure that everything's hunky-dory with everyone, especially in the Middle East right now. We need to go ahead and focus on ourselves first. This was the American first policies that we all voted Trump in for. But what he's doing right now is not American first. This is putting America like 3rd place right now. The thing is that like we didn't need to worry about Iran getting a nuclear weapon. All right. Because North Korea has one. What has Kim Jong-un done? Nothing. All right. And the thing is that like if we're so worried about these countries having nuclear weapons, we need to lead by example. We need to denuclearize ourselves with our nuclear arsenal, because the thing is that the non-nuclear weapons that we have now are a lot more powerful than the nukes that we have commissioned. And if we're going to tell these countries that they cannot have this stuff, we need to lead by example. We need to show them, hey, this is what we actually need to do. And the thing is that with the United States trying to tell everyone not to have nuclear weapons, and we keep on ramping our shit up from time to time too, it's ridiculous. Yes. And we're looking at everything that's going on in the Middle East, going like, well, you can't have one. Well, you can. And it's complete bullshit. It's hypocritical thinking. And when we're looking at Iran, all right, let's say they get a nuclear weapon. It's like you said, they're a paper tiger. They're not actually going to use it. Besides, we don't necessarily know what their enrichment was. Iran likes to lie about that stuff, whether if it's overinflated or underinflated. It's not going to happen. It most necessarily probably wasn't going to happen. But what most likely is going to happen now, because of these bombings, and the thing is that Iran does not give a flying shit about its people, especially since a lot of its citizens are terrorists themselves. They would have no problem going to war with us, using their proxies on top of that. This is why it's yep.
All right. Real quick, I'm just going to state that we're going to actually continue the rebuttals further than just the 3 rounds, because this debate has breathed very well, and we're going to do the rebuttals really until you guys are just ready to go into questionnaire.
Okay.
So we'll do, we can do at least 2 more rebuttals if that sounds good with you guys. Chase, it's your go. My bad.
Okay, it's okay. Anyway, so fundamentally, talking about denuclearization is completely ludicrous. I would like to not have nukes exist either. Don't get me wrong, but that's a leftist talking point, saying if we disarm, everyone else will. No. If we disarm, then we disarm. No. Do you think China's getting rid of their nukes? Absolutely the fuck not. Do you think Russia's getting rid of their nukes? Absolutely the fuck not. So when we do it, what are we setting the example? Oh, we're a bunch of pussies, and come get us. That's basically the example we're setting, and it's ridiculous. It's an argument that would have not been said by anyone who calls himself a conservative until maybe a year ago. It's quite frankly insane, and I think that. And I do agree that Iran is a paper tiger, but that doesn't necessarily mean I want them to have a nuke. I think that is completely insane. I think if you look at the amount of deaths and destruction Iran has caused in the Middle East, it is insurmountable, the questions that they have done to us. They have killed thousands of our people, thousands of Israelis, thousands of Saudi Arabians, thousands of Iraqis. Iran does not give a flying fuck about anybody. Iran is a scourge on the world. And so if we can stop them from getting a nuke, I consider it a victory. Now, however, I think it's concerning the way the Israelis went about it without our permission. I don't disagree with that. But I also think that if we have the opportunity to take out the nukes, why don't we? Iran has literally caused us so much pain, death, and destruction. And I'm getting sick of saying otherwise, because it's not people like Tucker Carlson. They blow it up, they play it down significantly. It's like, no, Iran has killed thousands of Americans. That is a fact. And anyone who thinks differently is stupid, quite frankly, because Iran is a threat. Even if they are not a big threat to our military, they're a threat to our people. They're a threat to the Middle East security. And fundamentally, they are a threat to our home because if we let them get a nuke, they'll be more emboldened to send terrorists across our border. They'll be more willing to get proxies around us. That's a fact. Iran will not stop at nukes. Iran will just keep going and going and going, and eventually they'll come after us because that's fundamentally what their extreme sect of Islam is all about. It's all about jihad. It's all about jihad and conquering places. Like, look at what's happening to England right now. Do we want that to be us? Because quite frankly, that's where we're headed if we keep being sorry and like saying, "Oh, we apologize for doing this." No, we don't apologize. We are the next superpower. We cannot stretch ourselves too thin, but we also cannot risk having a jihadist power with a nuke. That is a fact. Thank you.
Are we going to ignore that Riot looks like an Antifa member? I just wanted
guess.
to point that out.
Okay. Chase, are you still going?
No, I ended. I said thank you.
Oh, my bad. My alarm had just went off. So yeah, okay. All right. So Raider, it's about to be, or Anthony, it's about to be your turn, but I wanted to just state real quick, you guys actually can choose if you just want to do questionnaire. Right now, it'll be both rebuttal and questionnaire. So if you want to ask each other a question, do that. If you want to rebuttal, do that. You guys are just going to play the floor, and I'm just going to intervene if I need to. Your turn,
Okay.
Anthony.
I think we'll probably just do a few more rebuttals, but if we do the questions, how about we open it up to the floor?
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, so me ask the question?
You
No,
guys
like
have the
anybody.
questions, or anybody can ask the questions.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, well, Anthony, your go. And yeah, actually, the other people in here, if you guys want to ask any questions at some point, I know who's going to want to. It's going to be Riot. You can ask a question, and it needs to be a question, though, that goes to both of them. Don't just ask, because I know, Riot, I understand you're going to make this go back to theology and stuff. Chase is the only one here who's going to get deep in theology. If you're going to ask a theological question, or actually, no, don't ask a theological question. I'm going to straight up tell you don't do that, because that's not what this debate is for. Ask the questions they can both answer. And
he left as soon as you said that. Oh.
Okay, no, he's back. Okay, yeah. Riot, stay in here. Just don't ask a theological question when you have to ask questions. I know you're going to want to. All right, Anthony, it's your turn. We'll do a few rebuttals so you guys are done with that, and then people in here will ask questions. Ready, you go.
All right, so I'm not necessarily a conservative. Now, I'm an originalist constitutionalist when it comes to this stuff. Now, do I understand the outlines of the Constitution with the War Powers Act that the president can go ahead and bomb a country and then has 48 hours to notify Congress? Yes, I do. Do I agree with it? Yes, I understand it. Now, when I say that we have to denuclearize, that's because our nukes are not as powerful as the stuff that we have now. When I say we need to lead by example, it's because a lot of countries will follow us. Now we look at everything that's going on, like I said, with the Iranian conflict, we're looking at the Chinese. Their stuff will never be as powerful as what we got right now. Now, when we're looking at the Moab, I would have no problem with us using Moabs over nukes. We have to understand that the nuclear fallout with stuff is going to be a lot more terrible. So if we're able to go ahead and help countries realize that, that's what we need to do. Now, if we're going to go ahead and prevent nuclear enrichment for, let's say, every single country that we disagree with, because there's a chance that they could get a bomb, we have to go ahead and act that way all the time. But we did not act that way when it came to North Korea. Yeah, if we did that with North Korea, that would be fine. But considering that we're doing it only when it is entitled to us and prudent, when our economy is falling down, what seems like it happens every single time, because new wars go ahead and jumpstart the economy, which is complete bullshit and pisses me off, because every single time that does that, we lose lives.
Okay, I'm just gonna say, I actually vehemently, I think Clinton should have bombed North Korea. I think that was a mistake, a vast mistake, and a black mark on his presidency. If I was president, I would have done it, because I don't think our enemy should be having nukes fundamentally. And I would agree that war is good for the economy, and I think that's not great. But I think that fundamentally, we are afraid. Like, I mean, I think that being afraid is bad. Like, I don't understand why this is such a hard concept for some people. Like, being afraid of our enemies is a bad thing. We are the most powerful military in the world. And obviously, in the ideal world, denuclearizing is a great idea. Like, yeah, denuclearize. Everybody do it. But the moment we do it, China invades Taiwan because we have no deterrence at that point because mutually assured destruction is not a thing anymore once we do that. And so I actually don't think any countries in general should be getting any more nukes. I think the 9 countries that have them right now is plenty. And so I think we should work together to stop any country from getting nukes. But I do not want to trust Iran with a nuke because they are a fundamentally untrustworthy regime who would kill every single American if given the chance. Because fundamentally they hate us. They stomp on our flag in their airports. I've seen videos. And so I think that if we have to lose a couple lives to stop them from getting a nuke, it's a necessary evil. And I don't want to lose lives. I don't think we should invade them. But I don't think we should use ground forces. No, I don't. But I think if bombing is necessary, it's necessary. Like, it's a necessary evil. Because we all know if Iran gets a nuke and Iran gets emboldened, like North Korea, they're just going to show it off all the time. And maybe Iran's crazy enough to nuke Israel. Maybe they are. Maybe they are. I don't know. Or maybe they're crazy enough to nuke us. I don't know. Or nuke our base. I don't know. The thing is with Iran, they are crazy. We cannot let a crazy jihadist regime have weapons that are like insanely powerful. Like a nuke would literally set the whole Earth back for centuries. And I think that you could argue that conventional weapons have more power in theory, but the absolute fallout a nuke can cause is nothing compared. Like a Moab will cause some fallout, but it goes away relatively quickly. A nuke, it stays forever. And so I think if we get rid of the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, it emboldens our enemies like Russia and China. And so I think fundamentally we need to keep our nukes unless we can all get in a room and say we should all disarm, which is not going to happen fundamentally. As much as we would all like it, I don't live in a kumbaya liberal dream world that some people live in. And I think it's ludicrous to say that will happen because it won't. Thank you.
I think we can agree on that. The problem that I have with everything is that we need to try to do stuff diplomatically beforehand. And we need to just stop going so power hungry and attacking countries all willy-nilly. And the thing is, when it comes to, for instance, the China and Taiwan that you mentioned, all right, we have a lot of missiles everywhere throughout that are going to reach China within seconds, and that will deter them anyway. Wait, now the thing is that, like, I think we need to go ahead and have everything diplomatically as soon as we could. That's just how easier it would just be, in all honesty. Yeah, I see our bombings and putting military forces on the ground. It is second and third priority. You always want to try diplomacy first. Big stick diplomacy, just like Teddy Roosevelt did. That is how you go ahead and you make the world stronger, and make the country come together. We have to understand that we have to go ahead and have diplomatic solutions. We have to try that first. But if we're not able to, that's when we take these bombings out. And the thing is that Trump was going to meet with the Iranians, and he was going to actually try to meet with them this week before the stupid bombing happened. But he decided to do that anyway. We need to just go ahead and try the diplomatic solutions first. And if you get nowhere, then fine. You can go ahead and do that. Get what you want. Right. But diplomacy always has to be number one.
I don't disagree that diplomacy is important and it should be number one. I, in fact, agree with that. But I think there's a certain point where you can't be diplomatic with people. Like, if you look at World War II with Hitler and appeasement, they tried diplomacy for like 3 years. It didn't work. It still caused a massive war anyway, when if they just gotten ahead of it, it wouldn't have. So I think fundamentally, we've tried to negotiate with Iran for years, and it has not worked. And I don't want to hear this bullshit like, but Trump was negotiating with them again. No, like, it wasn't going to be any different. And the only deal that we would get is like some stupid nuclear deal like Obama got, where they just enriched uranium anyway. Like, diplomacy clearly does not work with these people. All they know is force, and they have shown this. They would kill every single American if they got the chance, and I don't think you disagree with that. And so I think that I don't trust them with a nuclear bomb. I just don't. It's like, we need to do anything in our power to stop them from getting a nuke. Because it's not just for Israel's security. In fact, I don't really give a fuck at this point, to be honest. I care about American security and American bases. And Americans would be fundamentally less safe if Iran had a nuke. Americans would be at risk. Americans would probably be getting killed. Because they'd rearm Hezbollah and Hamas and all that. And Americans would be getting killed. Left and right. So I don't want to take that risk. I think that it's better to happen this now. We've been negotiating with them for 30 years, for goodness sake. It's like there's a certain point where negotiations like doesn't work anymore. Like 30 years is a long time to be negotiating with someone to not get hardly any results whatsoever. And besides giving them stacks of cash where they would just build nukes anyway, like Obama did. But that was clearly not a deal. That was a scam. And I think that that's the only deal we'll accept. I don't think there will be any other deals. Like if we tell them they can't enrich uranium, that they're not going to accept that deal. So I think we need to strike now while we have the chance before it's too late. Thank you.
Well, that's the point. If we got to that point where like they say we can't, that they don't want to be in that deal where they cannot enrich any uranium, then yeah, go ahead and fucking bomb the fuckers. Like that simple. Well, but considering that we did not actually sit down and try to get the diplomatic solutions, especially since the Israelis went ahead and killed the guys that we were talking to for it, nothing was going to happen. And when you're saying that we were going ahead and negotiating with them for 30 years, well, how many times did we have an election and people got fired and everything like that? The problem is when you're negotiating and you take the people that out and you put different people in, you're not going to go ahead and meet that ground that you need to. We can both agree that we need to go ahead and have diplomacy first. The problem is that the Israelis with their initial attack killed the people that the Trump administration was actually talking to at the time. And now they were just left with a big hole, basically. Yeah, the Israelis knew what they were doing, and they wanted us Americans to get involved. And now we're going to get ready to pay the price.
I just fundamentally can't agree with your concept. Like, I agree, Israel was a little rash with their strike, and I would have, if I was president, I would have handled that differently. But I think that once we're already in this, we're in this. They weren't going to negotiate. Even if we didn't get involved, after Israel attacked, they weren't going to negotiate. That's a fact. And so I think we just really had no choice at this point. Like, we could have maybe gotten them back to the table, but 3 years from now when they already had a nuke, like, I think we had to strike now while it was necessary. And I think that I don't like strikes. I don't like intervention. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't like killing people. I don't like killing God's children. I don't. I think everyone's a child of God, and I don't want to kill them. But I think there's certain people that are just insane and jihadists, and that's what a lot of Iran's population is. Maybe not all of them. I'm sure there's some great Iranian people. But I think the vast majority of them are radicalized, crazy people that would kill an American if they saw one. That's a fact. I don't know about every single Iranian, but there's definitely a large group, and I think it's concerning. And I think just like it'd be the same as trusting Hamas with a nuke. Like you think they wouldn't use it? Like I'm concerned that Iran would use it, and I'm not concerned North Korea will use it. That's the main difference between the two. And so I think negotiation does have to come, but there's a certain point where negotiation is one solution, but negotiation can't go on forever. We can't just be negotiating with them for 50 years. A certain point, something has to happen. And I think that we realize this. And I think Trump realized this. And I agree. I think Trump did the America first thing, actually. It was not Israel first, like some people would say. It was America first. Because America, it's in our interest to not let a jihadist regime get a nuke. Because like it or not, America is a global entity, not just the United States. I mean, maybe some isolationist idiots would like it to be that way, but that's just not how it is, realistically. And so I think we did the right thing at the right time, and I think that it was a necessary evil, but it was also a thing that needed to happen, and it was just like I'm just quite frankly frustrated at the way at the reaction to the bombing when I would have thought people would understand it more. Thank you.
Well, you also got to look at this. All right, so for 40 years, here's all that has been going on. Were bombings in the Middle East. All right, that's why a lot of people, such as myself, have a problem with it. For instance, older millennium was pointing that out as well. The Gen Xers have a problem with it because they were saying, "Oh, there's weapons of mass destruction over there." And the thing is that like, yeah, people could say that they're building new stuff like that. And then, for instance, the mass destructions they got over there. Guess what? There was nothing. Whatever, right? But the thing is that like, yes, there's time for diplomacy and there's time to actually intervene in this. I just feel like that we should have given it another week before we should have intervened like we did. The problem is that the Israelis and AIPAC, I feel like, have gotten to President Trump too much. They put it into his head that we needed to get involved now, and he didn't weigh the opinions of the American people. He should have addressed the nation and probably a bit earlier, just so we knew what could have been happening, whether or not it was just a mulligan that was going to go ahead. And we just have to understand as an American people, yes, it's the hardest fucking job on the planet. But we got to go ahead and look at what it actually is to be the president of the United States and realize this is not what a majority of Americans elected him to do. We wanted to get rid of the Obama, Bush, and Clinton ways because we are tired of the bombings.
Well, fundamentally, Americans are they don't know what they want, to be quite honest, because a poll came out recently. 80% of Americans said they didn't want to attack Iran, but the same poll also said 85% of Americans said Iran cannot have a nuke under any circumstances. So what exactly does that mean? I think President Trump was elected to be a pragmatic leader and know what needs to happen at the time. And it may not be popular. Sometimes things aren't popular, but they have to be done for the long-term interests of the United States. And I think this is one of them. And I think that maybe Trump will take some fallback for this, but it's worth it. If we can stop Iran from having a nuke, that everything would have been worth it. And I don't think any negotiations were on the table anymore, quite frankly. And had we given them another week, they would have just given us the finger anyway. We already gave them 4 days, and they just gave us the finger. Nothing would have changed, quite frankly. So I'm glad we did it when we did. And I think that President Trump's reasoning was extremely sound. I think that President Trump knew what was best for the country, even if it was unpopular, and he did that. President Trump is not afraid to take some backlash, and he shouldn't be. Because like some idiots like Tucker Carlson will say, oh, well, he shouldn't have done... Trump doesn't care. He does what's right, not what is popular. And I think that's the good thing. Because doing what's popular all the time is fundamentally bad. And I think that Trump is willing to go out on a limb and say, yeah, this might not be popular, but we must do it. And I think that Trump is correct in that decision. Thank you.
So when you say that it's pragmatism, was this really pragmatism? Now, the thing is that the American people, yes, they do not know what they want necessarily, like you said. And I saw the same poll. Hold on. The thing is that the American people are also a people with short-term attention spans and short memory, especially when it comes to coming up to election cycles. All right. Now, the thing is that I'll say that it did help Trump with one thing right now, is that he did it right now in 2025 rather than in 2026. Because if he did it in 2026, the Republicans would for sure lose the House. We would for sure lose the House over this. Easily. Yeah. But we also got to understand that there are avenues we need to take correctly. Yeah. I do not think that the diplomacy avenue was exhausted just enough. I think if we had till the end of this week, like we originally were going to do, people would have been fine with it. Okay. It's just at that point, though, we need to exhaust every single option before that, especially when it comes to putting lives on risk, and we're going to head ahead and putting our B-22s that are, in all honesty, a modern fucking marvel, in the way to Iran, and they could go ahead and potentially gun it down, and go ahead and reverse engineer it, let's say.
Okay, we have now entered the point of the debate where whenever one of you finishes a talking point, someone here is allowed to ask you a question. Now, if no one has a question, you can just get to talking. So, real quick, I'm not gonna always talk and then say, people, you have a chance to ask a question, because going forward, you guys should know that. But starting right now, anyone here, if you have a question for Chase or Anthony, you can ask it. I will ask my question towards the end, because I assume at least Riot will have one. Everyone here, does anyone here have a question to ask them? Riot. I guess Riot isn't here. Of course he's not. Okay, well, Devin, do you have any question to ask?
No question.
Okay. I don't know where Riot went. That's annoying. Here, let me tag him, see if he'll show up, because I was looking forward to his questionnaire. Well, if you guys have a question you want to ask each other, you guys can do that. Or if you can just want to talk, you can do that.
Sorry, I had a bit of a Wi-Fi crash, but I'm ready to move to questions if you are.
I'm ready to move to questions. I saw the California Wi-Fi hit. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm back.
Well, actually, you know what? I guess I will ask a question. This question will be for both of you. I want to ask, and this is kind of a basic question. I want to ask, though, to both of you, where do you think that the line needs to... Oh, wait, Riot's here. Riot, do you want to ask? Riot.
Yeah, so I don't want to ask a question. I just want to, I guess, I don't know, comment. Am I allowed to comment?
You can comment, but you better have like a question with it because you're not the one in the debate. You are.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. So, okay. When you guys were, I feel like you guys were presupposing that Iran's goal is to build a nuclear bomb. When we have no really good source intelligence for that, and we have a lot of fairly good explanations on why they want that much enriched uranium. And two, I feel like wait, shit, what was I gonna say? Let me think. I feel like you guys were giving a lot of false dichotomies. Like, oh, if Iran doesn't agree to stop their uranium enrichment, we have to bomb them, blah, 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 blah. But I can think of a million other solutions. Like, one that just comes off the top of my head is like, make a deal with Iran's nuclear progression, whatever the fuck, development, and just monitor their nuclear enrichment and actually like help fund them with their projects because their projects are good. If they're using it to make like medical isotopes and they're using it to make good quality submarines, like why should we force this dichotomy of, oh, bomb them if they continue their enrichment, or we force them to stop their enrichment completely? Like, why put up that dichotomy?
Do you want to take this first, Raider, or do you want me to do it?
Well, so mine was the diplomacy side of things. So, for instance, with like the uranium stuff like that, I have no problem helping them with that. All right. That's why I said that diplomacy should come first with that, and that would go ahead and help fill in the blanks with it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give my answer. I don't think it's tolerable for them to have any amount of enriched uranium because, quite frankly, they can make a dirty bomb, and I don't trust Shia jihadists with any amount of enriched uranium. So I think the option is either no enrichment or bombing. That's my view.
Okay, but you realize that that's just such like a malicious and not practical dichotomy at all, because you know for a fact that they're actually developing their nuclear, they're actively progressing their nuclear development for objectively good projects that don't include nuclear weapons. Plus, when you say, oh, they're just this dirty jihadist group, I guess so, but you're also disregarding a bunch of stuff that Iran has been doing that's been successful and good. Like, I just don't like why are those your two questions or two answers? Go ahead, Patriot.
I was gonna say, I mean, okay, I guess you had a question with what you added, but you're not a member of the debate. You're
No. I know. I'm just genuinely trying to ask him, like why, like what is making him come to that like dichotomy? Besides, like, oh, they're just evil Muslims. Like what?
It's a complex understanding, but we can talk about that another time. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think Riot, if you have any other questions, you can ask them, but I'm going to go and ask this one first. So I want to ask, actually related to the whole, this question goes to both of you, but I want to ask, though, really specifically. Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask a question for Chase. I'm going to ask a question for Anthony. So I'm going to start with you, Chase. I'm going to ask this question specifically for you. Usually the question has to be for both people, but you both can interject. However, it's going to be related to something each of you said. So starting off Chase, I need to ask this question specifically for you. Why exactly? And again, Anthony, you can interject any thought you have, but why exactly do you continuously use the fact that they are jihadas, that there's a lot of radical Muslims in Iran, to justify your viewpoint that we need to strike Iran and play, I'm not going to call you a neocon, but definitely play, some interventionist tactics with them?
Because it's simple. Because I think that there is a large amount of them, and I think that jihadist objective. That's what Al Qaeda was. That's what ISIS is, and I think that fundamentally, if you compare them, it's like they're basically the same thing. And so, yeah, would I trust ISIS with a nuke? No, and there's a lot of them there. So that's, I guess, my view is I don't trust any terrorist group with a nuke. I don't care what religion they are.
So I want to follow that up. Here's why I was asking that question, is because I want you to see how, by that same logic, another country could say we shouldn't have nukes. Okay, another country may view certain viewpoints that we have in this country, certain groups in this country, as extremists. Now, I know what you're going to say back, and I'm with you on this part. Well, the U.S. doesn't have the same terrorist problem that the Middle East does. That's true. I don't disagree with that, of course. But at the same time, I'm just trying to say that, do you see how other countries may end up saying certain, major groups in the United States, some on the left, some on the right, are massive extremists? And keep in mind, they're getting taught pretty bad things about us. Let's keep that in mind. Western media teaches us something, while other media teaches these nations the stark opposite. So, do you see how this same principle could be applied to other nations?
I kind of do, but in the sense that I don't necessarily think that we have extremist groups. Don't get me wrong, but they're not embedded in our government to the sense where to the same extent where the terrorist groups are embedded in the Iranian government. So I guess that'd be my view. And I would also say that there's a certain fundamental natural law that we follow that Iran doesn't. For example, like killing women for not wearing headscarves, stuff like that. So I think that's the fundamental difference, because there's a natural law that every human should be expected to follow.
Okay, this will be the last thing I want to add in. Basically, I just wanted to say, though, that, do you at least see, though, how maybe some of these Islamic governments may look at the United States and see that 90% of Congress, because you say, oh, well, it's not our government. Okay, well, 90% of our members of Congress are lobbied by AIPAC. That's a fact. 90%, 95% of Republicans, 85% of Democrats are lobbied by AIPAC. Now, I know I'm not saying AIPAC is as destructive as, radical Islamic terrorists, but I also think there's a big issue with framing that all Muslims are terrorists. Not all Muslims in the Middle East are terrorists. In fact, the vast majority are not. So I would just like to finish this question by saying, do you at least, when it comes to, and I wanted to say this, I'm sorry to make myself kind of a part of the debate. I just wanted to say, do you see how other countries specifically could look at our government structure, and how a foreign government, how Israel, someone who is, there's no denying, has caused or used a lot of interventionist tactics, how they see that we are in bed with them, how our government is 90% lobbied for by them, how that may make them think that we should not have all of the military personnel that we have.
I would fundamentally push back on the precept that AIPAC is fully they're for a lot of Israel's interest, but they are not exactly just Israel. And say what you want about AIPAC, I don't like AIPAC that much, but they are not a terrorist organization. So I fundamentally don't agree with the precept that, because it's fundamentally different. AIPAC does not use terror in the same sense that a Shiite extremist would.
Okay, that's fine.
That'd be my response.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to say anything else. You've made your response pretty clear. We have a lot of I agree with a lot of what you said. Obviously, I was basically trying to see how you could see the viewpoint of someone from the outside. But Anthony, if you want to follow in basically on that question, you can, and basically follow up what he said.
Yeah, just repeat the question for me, please, and thank you.
Okay, so the question that I asked him was, the original question was, why exactly does he consistently like to have these, I'm going to say, I guess in this context, why does he use the scapegoat that Israel is made up of jihadists to justify virtually any sort of intervention against them. Now, the question that went beyond that, because after I knew what his answer was going to be, and Chase, your answer wasn't wrong. I'm not bashing you, but then I basically asked him, okay, so do you see how maybe a foreign country may look at our government structure and see that 90% of Congress is lobbied for by AIPAC, and how that may make them think that our country shouldn't have nukes?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's countries that we don't necessarily align with even with the Abrahamic religions, with Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. That they'll be like, well, the United States is too radical, shouldn't have that stuff easily. Like, I for one just don't think people should really have nukes in general. But if the government has it, so should I. That's all that I like to say. Now, on the term where him saying jihadists and everything, the reason why I don't like using the word jihadists or radical, or the term radical jihadists, is that it has basically lost all meaning towards it. It's like people going ahead and saying racist, anti-Semitic, stuff like that. It's just lost all meaning, because a lot of people now, when they're going ahead and calling people radicals, it's just necessarily, well, I do not agree with this principle of their thinking. Oh, look, there's Antifa.
Yeah, that's. Oh gosh, that's fair. That's fair enough there. Now, Anthony, I'm gonna, because I don't think, Chase, you don't really need to rebuttal what he said, or if you want to, actually, you can. Do you want to rebuttal what he just said, Chase, or no?
I would just want to make a real quick point, if that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
I would say that jihadist, in the sense that it has been overused, but I'm using jihadist in the literal sense of the word. Like, they want to kill Christians and kill Americans. That is what my definition of a jihadist is. Like, they want to kill infidels. Like, I'm not saying it has been overused, but in this case, I'm using it in its literal sense.
Oh no, I wasn't saying that. Like, you were just overusing it, like how people are using it now in the media. I was just saying how it's just getting overused now.
Fair enough. Okay, so I asked that question to go after a talking point from Chase. There's other questions I could think of, honestly, but I'm now going to actually, because I'm going to be fair, I want to ask Anthony a question. So, again, both of you can comment on this. In fact, you guys have commented on this specific issue multiple times. So, Anthony, I do not disagree with you. I would like to state real quick, I do not disagree with you, and it doesn't even sound like Chase necessarily disagrees with you on the claim that nobody should have nuclear weapons. But I want to ask you, and I'm in many ways even more anti-interventionism than you are, but I would like to ask, how exactly do you think that us getting rid of our nuclear operations would be a good defense strategy, simultaneously, while we have no way of preventing or of making China and specifically Russia? I'm not someone who says Russia's our number one enemy, but Russia does have even more nukes than we do. So don't you think it could be detrimental to us to get rid of all of our nuclear operations while all these other countries will still have nukes?
Not necessarily. It's been proven. In all honesty, it's been proven with a lot of things when it comes to this. And the thing is that, so when we're talking about the denuclearization of the United States, it's like you said, Russia has a lot more. China is actually getting up there with how many that we have now, if I remember correctly. I don't remember the amount that they have on top of my head. But it's gotten to that point where, yeah, we already know we're not going to be able to tell these countries, like, hey, get rid of them. It's just that we've used them. We've seen the fallout and what it could happen to a country, to a people. Well, so if they're looking at the people that, let's be honest, all right? We didn't necessarily invent it. We just beat the Nazis to the punch to it. Is all that it was. Because if they're seeing a lot of us going ahead and starting the denuclearization process, I do think that some countries will necessarily follow. However, it will be hard to get someone like the Chinese on board. That's why I say, like, if we're going to actually do the denuclearization process, we need to go ahead and when we're getting rid of the nukes, we need to go ahead and have other avenues when we're decommissioning them, like going ahead and having like nuclear energy, the nuclear subs, stuff like that. it's more of a lead by example when it comes to that, because we have unleashed the evil, and if we're trying to put that back in the bottle, there will be countries that will follow suit, and sometimes those countries are our worst enemies that will do that.
Okay,
Can I
Chase, if
comment?
you want to, yeah, of course you can. I was just about to say.
I just think I fundamentally disagree with that precept. I think if we got rid of our nukes, it leaves us open to attack from other countries and stuff, and it's not worth the risk, quite frankly. I mean, because if you honestly think China or Russia are going to get rid of their nukes if we do, I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you, because it's not going to happen. Maybe we can get, like, I don't know, Israel to get rid of their nukes, or India or Pakistan, but China and Russia, which is our two biggest geopolitical opponents, they're not getting rid of their nukes fundamentally. So I would disagree with the idea of getting rid of nukes. I think nukes are evil, and we shouldn't have invented them in the first place. But now that we have them, you can't just put the genie back in the bottle, you know? And that's all I got to say on that.
Oh no, you and I agree
So-
with that. That I'm not saying that, like, that was in, like, the perfect world situation, right? Right. The thing is that, like, if we're going to go ahead and have our nuclear arsenal, well, look, we shouldn't necessarily, like, increase it anymore. But, like, by the time they're getting decommissioned, I think we should just replace them to, like, a 1-to-1 ratio at the most, if that makes sense.
That's fair, but I think we've exhausted this question. Does anyone else have any questions?
Actually, I don't think you've exhausted this question as much as you may
Oh, yeah?
think, because I would like to. No. I would like to actually. I would like to ask another sub part of this question. Would you both agree with me and on this take that I think what is the correct answer? And this is, this is going to be very difficult. It's going to be we're going to need someone very pragmatic, and I don't know exactly how the ins and outs of this would work, but would we all agree that we do need to have some diplomatic relations to essentially come together with other major nations like a Russia, like a China, to basically say, if all three of us lead the way? That's just three examples. Of course, there's other nations who have a lot of nukes as well, Israel being one of them. If all of us, nations who have 100+ nukes lead the way with denuclearizing, do you think that would basically be good for humanity?
Yes, I do.
Okay, yeah, you can just
Yep.
answer simple yes or no. Okay, we all agree on that?
Yep, I think that should be the end goal. But the thing is that none of the countries are willing to take that first step.
So you think, though, that the U.S. taking that first step, though, would work out? That's basically your view, though.
Yeah, I think that if we're going to do that, we need to be the ones to take the first step.
All right, this will be the last question related to nukes, but this is a simple one. You guys can answer yes or no, or you can comment. Should Israel have nuclear weapons? Should we have ever let Israel obtain nuclear weapons? I believe Israel has like 90 nukes. I could be off a little bit on that, but I know
It's around 90. We don't know for sure, but around there.
Okay, they're in the top 10. So I would just like to ask, do you think that if Israel had never obtained a nuke, would you agree with the notion that potentially would never have incentivized Iran and other Middle Eastern nations to constantly be scrambling for the assets to obtain a nuke?
I don't agree with that premise. I think that even if Israel didn't have nukes, Iran would want them anyway, to be honest. I just think that there's too much benefits to having them, versus where conventional weapons would be. So I think Iran would be looking for it, no matter if Israel had them or not. That's my honest answer.
I mean, the thing is that I could agree with you with that. The thing is that, like, your neighbor has this shiny new toy. Obviously, you're going to want to have it. That's basically what's going to happen, and with a lot of these situations.
So, Anthony, that means you do believe Israel should not have nukes?
Well, look, I'm on the stance where I don't really think any country should have nukes in a perfect world.
Okay, but do you think that? I guess I should have framed it like this: back in the '60s, before he died, JFK never wanted Israel to obtain nukes. Okay, JFK. Oh, Chase he'll be back in. But JFK never wanted Israel to ever obtain a nuke, and then they ended up obtaining. So you can wait to answer this question once he gets back. Okay, he's back now. Do you think that JFK was right in his initial premise in the '60s? Away from the idea that no nation should have nukes, do you think specifically that he was right when he said Israel should not have a nuke because it would cause more escalation in the Middle East?
No, I don't believe he was right.
No, and the thing is that JFK was a lot about a lot of things. Well, in that situation, not necessarily.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? I have some I could ask, but I'm going to take a break from asking because I think I've took up way too much of this debate. Autismo, do you have any? Knight Jr., do you have any? Seriously, I do mean any question related to foreign policy is game.
You can type them in the chat too, whatever.
Yes, you can.
Really, I mean, I'm just trying to get ready to go get my work.
You don't
Anyone
have a
else?
question, Autismo?
I'm
Well,
just
I guess
waiting for this thing to be over so we can play cards while I'm waiting on
Oh,
him.
Knight Jr. did have a question in the chat. Should we
Okay.
have risked
All right.
the 84,000 U.S. active soldiers in or around Europe area with this attack?
that one.
Okay,
This
who
is
wants to take this
approximately
first?
2025.
Who wants to take this first, Chaser? Anthony.
I'll take it. I actually fundamentally think yes, and I say this as someone who has two relatives in that region, and I know that they are at risk by doing that, and so I don't take the decision lightly, but I think that it was worth the risk in the end.
No, it was not worth risking the 84,000 lives of active soldiers in the European area when it came to this. Yes, I've had too many friends and family die already when it comes to war.
Okay. I actually am going to ask one question here. It's going to be simple. Well, your answers won't be simple, but my question will be simple. I won't have to elaborate much. Do you support the war efforts in Afghanistan?
The former war efforts, like the one we pulled out of.
Yes. Do you support the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan? Chase, you can start.
I do, yes, I do support the invasion of Afghanistan, not Iraq. That's a different thing, but Afghanistan, I do. Because I think there was a lot of evidence that that Afghanistan was hiding Al Qaeda members, and I think it was it was necessary at the time.
Going
Now,
ahead.
actually, I'll
I thought you were
clarify
done.
real quick.
Go ahead.
I don't think I just thought of something I had to clarify. I'll clarify. I don't think the nation building was a good thing, but I think the initial invasion was a good thing. Yes.
I'll say the initial invasion to go ahead and track down the people that did 9/11 was a good thing, but going ahead and prolonging the war, saying that they had weapons of mass destruction, 100% not a good thing. We should have just gotten the people that we already knew that were involved with 9/11 and taken them out. Simple.
Chase, I think your viewpoint's a little more hawkish than his on this stance. Do you still believe that it would be better if the U.S. was still in Afghanistan right now?
That's a tough one. I'm gonna say I don't know about right now, but I'm gonna say I'm gonna say if we stayed a little longer, it would have been beneficial. Yes, because we would have been able to get our equipment out of there and stuff, and I think that would have been beneficial long term.
How much longer?
That's my as long as it took to dismantle all our equipment and not leave them anything behind, and hope and that as long as that took, basically.
All right. Well, we should have been there as long as we have been. And there was no reason for us to doing the nation building as long as we did. Yeah. We should have probably gotten out of there under Obama.
Definitely. So
I don't disagree, but there was a smart and a dumb way to do it. We did it the dumb way.
okay, wait, Chase, you disagree with that? Okay, say where you.
No, I said I don't disagree. I think there was a. I said I don't disagree. I think there was a. We did it the stupid way.
Okay, so now I guess the main thing to ask is, do you believe there should be regime change in Iran? And if so, do you think that the United States should make a clear or take a clear side, not necessarily in the sense that we get involved, because I think both of you definitely say no on that, but do you think the U.S. should take a clear side, say, with the rebels against Iran, the same way that we did in Syria?
I do believe, yes, we should do that.
I'm against regime change, especially just being involved with the Middle East is because we go ahead and we just have people take over all the time, even the rebels that we support, they end up being tyrannical in the end.
You guys can, by the way, elaborate on your viewpoint here. I was actually wanting Chase to elaborate why he supports that.
Okay, well, I just thought it was a yes or no question, but I do support it in the sense that I think that getting rid of the mullahs would be a good thing because they wouldn't be funding the proxy groups anymore, and so I think taking a clear side, not with military force, but with like say aid, is a good idea, and I think that it would actually maybe create a better government, maybe under like the Shah again or something, and a more Western friendly government. So I think fundamentally, it is not a bad idea as long as we don't directly get Americans killed by doing it.
All right, Knight's typed another question in the chat. So.
Okay, let me read it. Do you think? I will say that I do think we were unprepared. Yes, I don't disagree with that.
I think we were as prepared that the Bush administration wanted us to be, because they wanted the money to keep on rolling in after the attacks on 9/11. They wanted to be unprepared so they can go ahead and line their pockets even more.
All right. Any other questions from anybody?
I would actually have a minor. I don't know why I forgot about this one because I was planning on asking this from the beginning, but this is related to both of you. But Chase, I would like to ask because you made a very powerful statement in the beginning that had the U.S. been involved, you essentially said had the U.S. Not been basically not been quote unquote weak or isolationist prior to 9/11, that 9/11 never would have happened. I want you to elaborate what you mean by that.
I mean that we were too stuck in the clouds, and the CIA had assets saying that yes, this would happen, and we knew it probably like 2 years in advance it would happen or something would happen, but we took no action. We just basically sat on our hands and basically put our heads in the sand and said, nothing will probably happen. We'll be fine. That's what I mean. I think we should have taken more decisive action.
Well, with that, you got to understand it's like Israel with October 7th is that we get so much intel saying that there's going to be attacks happening on so and so date that never really amount to anything. It's the same thing with us. So with us saying like, oh yeah, this could possibly happen, but it probably won't be because 99.9% of the would-be attacks never happen.
Basically, all I'm saying is that we should have looked into it more, and we should have been a little more thinking that yes, that might happen because we already had sources on the ground telling us that. So I think that we should have definitely investigated more and like actually looked into the threat more than we did.
Well, we're looking at
And perhaps even airstrikes if we needed to.
Well, the thing is that like you're looking at through the lens that we have now, which is 27 years later after the fact. So if we're looking at the lens that they do now, because the thing is that like when we're talking about this stuff, we all like to believe that they have the same information that we know now with everything. Go like, oh yeah, this was definitely going to happen. We don't necessarily know that. We got to understand. We got to look at everything at the period that it was happening in, and that to fully understand what was going on.
Yeah, I just fundamentally think there was more that we could have done and we didn't do it. So that's, I guess, my view. And I guess to tying it back to Iran real quick, I think that if we allowed Iran to get a nuke, I think another 9/11 potentially could have happened caused by an Iranian proxy. I really do. You can call me crazy if you want, but I really believe that.
Is everyone just turning on their cameras all of a sudden now? Like what?
Okay.
Yeah.
Any more questions, or should we go to polling?
I thought Anthony was gonna elaborate there, but I guess not. I don't know why we're turning on our cameras. Not really any point of it, but yeah. If you guys have any questions for each other?
I think we basically answered each other's questions throughout the debate, in all honesty.
Yeah, we have.
So, well, here's the silver lining at least. Both of you dislike Candace Owens, but both of you also dislike, say, Nikki Haley and George W. Bush, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I viciously hate Candace Owens, and I dislike Nikki Haley, so I guess they're different. But
And I think Anthony.
I don't like either of them.
I think Anthony viciously hates both of those two.
Yeah, I was calling Candace Owens a grifter before it was cool.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're ready for the polling now. Some people didn't actually stay for the whole thing, but to be honest, the questionnaire part, some of it actually I am keeping into account, but most of it isn't going to really have much to do with how I vote. But here we go. It's going to be time for this polling. Who won the June 22nd? Actually, no, let's not even call it by date. Who won? Actually, yeah, we will. The 6/22/25 non-interventionist, or not non, we'll say foreign policy. Foreign policy